Well,
Mm-hmm.
here we are. Sorry, StreamYard's giving us this weird thing where I'm not live on Facebook. I don't even know what that means. But we are live. We are Earth's Mightiest Critics, and we are here for. It seems like we've been doing a lot of these in recent years, or recent months, weeks, even. Here we go again. The series
Yep.
where we look at a film that has been remade, and we kind of analyze the source and then the remake, and say, hey, what's the difference? Is one better, one worse? Here we're doing a mega review of the Fantastic Four. And we're not just talking about Fantastic Four First Steps, although we will get to that, but we are discussing the entire Fantastic Four cinematic franchise. That's the 1994 Roger Corman film that was never officially released. We are talking about the Tim Story film from 2005, and we'll do a parenthetical look in at its sequel from '07, The Rise of the Silver Surfer. Then there is the Josh Trank directed 2015 commonly known as Fan Four Stick because of the terrible logo. And now we have Fantastic Four First Steps, directed by Matt Shakman. This franchise has had a very storied start and stop history going back to the 90s. And a lot of folks feel that there's, the First Steps I've heard called the first great Fantastic Four. That might be, but I don't think it's the first good Fantastic Four. Even in all the iterations that people kind of find problematic or cheesy or weird for whatever reason, in rewatching them for this show, I found a lot to admire and a lot to talk about. And sort of the idea of, have we even seen the best version of the Fantastic Four, or are there ingredients that someday 20 years from now, when someone decides to relaunch this, they could perhaps take some of those ideas and move forward to something that will please everybody? The answer, of course, is no, because you can't please everyone. But I am pleased to welcome Earth's Mightiest Critics. Hey.
Oh, last week. Sorry. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, gotcha.
2 weeks ago, Don. 2 weeks ago was the Superman melee.
Yeah. That's right. Good times.
Now, I just want to set the expectation. We might get into some Superman, Fantastic Four talk. I don't know. But the point of this show is not to necessarily compare and contrast, although I'm not going to steer people away if they want to bring up something that's relevant. But I do want to focus on this weird franchise. But Don Shanahan of Film Obsessive and Every Movie Has a Lesson and everything else. The Cinephile Hissy Fit podcast, of course. Thank you and welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to Wednesday. All the days are blending together. Everything's a Saturday.
Don't worry, the school year is coming up, so structure will find you.
True. It's coming. It's coming.
Katie Glidewell, the blonde in front. You want 4 more, please? I like that. You're wearing your recommendation on your sleeve there. I love it. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm looking forward to talking about one of my favorite Marvel films, possibly ever. I don't know. Definitely one of my favorites this year, which, I mean, there's been 3 and, it's in the top 3, but yeah, which sometimes are not. But yeah, looking forward to talking about this.
Awesome. Mark, the movie man Krawcheck. Oh, wow. You have had an identity change, sir. You are usually the DC show, but now you are the hashtag CBM, that's comic book movie shill. Wow, are you coming over to the Marvel / DC side? Like we can all kumbaya and get together? This is great.
It is part of that, yes. In light of the last 3-4 comic book movies, and also the fact that online trying to lessen the trend of the division, and I just want a good movie. And so instead of just singling out DC shill, I want a good comic book movie. I don't care if it's DC, Sony, whatever company puts it out. I just want an entertaining and interesting comic book film. And so I've decided to go by the CBM shill, in that I will look at positives for every film. And I'm going to put in context so that I will be looking, when we get to the Fantastic Four steps, I will be context of just looking at that movie and not bringing up the previous film that was discussed 2 weeks ago on the show.
And then he dipped.
Wow.
I love it.
And then
That
my camera dips.
Mic
Only on your
drop
show
and
does
scene.
it do this. I swear.
Yeah.
So dramatic, Mark.
That was dramatic.
Wow. It's like, I shall
Sorry.
not be talking about the other one. And
Back to the corner he goes.
But here's the thing, Mark. It does only happen on my show. I think it actually happened on Spoiler Room once, maybe twice.
Only once, but yeah.
But it always happens when you're on my show, right as you say something very dramatic, and it gives
I
you
know.
this wonderful mic drop moment. So I approve.
It's my
It's an
camera.
extra feature you can buy on StreamYard where they detect
right.
the AI
Yeah,
where you're talking
yeah.
about like now would be a good time. Yeah.
Well, at these prices, they better be offering all sorts of bells and whistles.
Yeah.
Oh.
Funny.
All right. And then we finally have, last but certainly not least, well, I guess I should introduce myself, but I won't. You can see my name on there. Jeff York of The Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artist. How are you doing, sir?
Good. Great to be with you all again.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's take the Wayback Machine. I do want to keep this show reasonably timed because we all have lives, and we probably could talk about these movies for like 17 hours, but I need to sleep. So in the interest of keeping things brief, we'll do kind of like an overview of each of the films leading up to First Steps. I want to talk about the negatives that people kind of rag on whenever they talk about these movies, but also some positives that you may have noticed. Now, maybe you didn't see any positives. Maybe you're like, they were all terrible in their own unique ways. We can certainly get into that. But if there's something in your rewatches where you think, wow, people maybe gave this an unfair shake, let's talk about it. So 1994, Roger Corman directed the Fantastic Four. Famously, it was a case of trying to retain rights to the Marvel Comics properties. This is way before anybody had a concept of what comic book movies could be. I mean, we're post 78 Christopher Reeve and all those sequels. We're post Tim Burton's Batman. We're kind of in between. Well, no, it's the year before Schumacher's Batman and Robin, right, and then or Batman Forever and all that stuff. So it's a very strange place for comic book movies. I know they had done that weird Captain America with the Italian Red Skull. They'd done the Dolph Lundgren, Louis Gossett Jr. Punisher, which the one time I saw it, I was like, this is pretty good, except I don't think there was a skull in that entire movie, at least an emblem. But so yeah, it's a strange film. I can only find it on kind of like Internet Archive bootleg upload, and it was a very kind of garbagey copy, but I could still get the gist of what was going on. And it's the classic origin story of the Fantastic Four, but set in the 90s. It wasn't set in the 60s. So you've got scientists who are kind of exploring the unknown. There's an accident of kind of cosmic radiation, and our four principal heroes, or would-be heroes, and one villain who begins as an associate, Dr. Doom, they all get blasted by these rays and sort of mutated with different abilities. So you've got Reed Richards, who becomes Mr. Fantastic. He can stretch. You've got Sue Storm, who is, she turns into the Invisible Woman. Her younger brother, Johnny Storm, who becomes the Human Torch. He flames on. And then you've got Ben Grimm, who's sort of the pilot and, best buddy of Reed Richards, who becomes the Thing, a giant, hulking rock monster who loves to say it's clobbering time, especially in that 94 version. My goodness. I think he was getting paid by the syllable on that. But, yeah, so they have to team up against Dr. Doom, and in this version, Dr. Doom he's more street level of a criminal than I had recalled or even expected. I mean, they do set him up as sort of the ruler of Latveria, but then he's also running around the sewers with henchmen who are also dressed in green capes and, donning machine guns. So is this movie as terrible as people remember it or say it is, or is there any redeeming value in 94's Fantastic Four?
It's got entertainment value, especially if you like your cheesy stuff. If you look at Schumacher's Batman, I wouldn't recommend Forever. Go for Batman and Robin. But in any case, which I've changed my tune over the years. It was the other way around for a long time. But anyway, if you're going to watch those. But if you look at the vein of those, you're right. This is a weird time for comic book films as people are trying to cash in on the hype that became Batman, because suddenly Tim Burton showed that, hey, you can have a successful property that doesn't have a big S on it that says, because Superman was pretty much the only really successful superhero film that anyone even attempted to in the big screen. I mean, there were some other attempts, but nothing like this. And then Batman came along and they're like, oh, we can do other properties. Let's get in on this. One of the rare ones was, and that came out a year after Batman, was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was a surprise. While it broke away from the source material, that's actually a very good movie considering what it is and what they did. It was ambitious and it was interesting, and that was the way you wanted to handle it. The Fantastic Four 94 version is fun. It's campy. They were going for a very comic booky version. They didn't have the budget behind it. I mean, this is basically late
like
canon.
$1 million.
This is canon level budget, but they made the most of what they did. And if you look at what they did, you can see they got ambitious with it. And it's just, they didn't have, their eyes were bigger than their stomach, so to speak. But I think they did the best. I think the performance of the people were fine for what they were given. I mean, you recognize them as the characters. I'm not, full disclosure, very familiar at all with the Fantastic Four. Outside of, I know who the characters are, and I've seen them in a couple crossover comics. But watching it, I'm like, for 94, and it's Roger Corman, I'm like, I double feature this with Battle Beyond the Stars. It's the sci-fi version of Seven Samurai. So it's got some heart and charm to it. I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. I think it was just limited by many real world factors, which if you check out the documentary, which I had the chance to, you learn a lot about what went into that film and the problems it had and what it could have been. So for me personally, but everybody knows I like cheesy bad films. I like Batman v Superman. So what do I know? But, I enjoy it. I enjoyed it. I marathoned all 4 of the other Fantastic Four films in one day.
Whoa.
Watched them back to back. And that's an interesting perspective, but.
Well, and I want to pick up on something you said there, Mark, about the limited budget, but the big kind of ambition. Because it was in 1987 was Superman for the Quest for Peace. And we were talking about it on a recent show. I feel like if you had taken that script and just updated it with modern special effects and maybe eased a little bit back on the cheese.
Yeah,
it would have been solid because the climactic fight between Superman and Nuclear Man has a tremendous amount of scale. They're flying up to the moon and pummeling each other and everything. It just looks terrible because they had no money left. But I mean, as evidenced by, and yes, I'm going to dip into a little bit, but by James Gunn's Superman, they're swiping ideas from Superman 4, specifically like cloning Superman by a strand of hair, which was the Nuclear Man kind of genesis there. So there's some value in that, and also I think some value in the 94 Fantastic Four. So yeah, thanks for that perspective. Don, how about you?
Yeah, I'm with Mark. There's a place for cheese and there's a place for an easy Friday night, just entertaining thing. And the 94 one holds up just fine for that. When you have to scale back all those capital E expectations that you have and realize you're watching a $1 million film done by people who are just really trying to squeeze everything they can. And the ambition really shines through. The heart does shine through. I really appreciate Alex Hyde White playing Reed Richards. I think he had a really nice arc, to kind of see him come up as the professor, to see the passage of time with the character. And I know Doom gets a little not quite mustache twirling or anything like that because he's got a mask on, but it gets a little silly at the end. But they really do try with the effects, trying to kind of animate Johnny Storm as best you can. Where I mean, if you even if that movie had Superman 4's budget of like $3.5 million, imagine what they could have done with triple the budget, let alone 10 times the budget to be $10 million, let alone what Batman Forever would do 2 years later, a year later with $75 million. So budget is a thing you have to kind of put into play with it. But you can see, as you said, the ambition and the commitment to try to do something through the means of which they had or didn't have. And for that, I really do appreciate it. I have a great time with it. There's times that where that film, like if you're ranking and doing the letterbox thing, there's a chance that movie is like the second best Fantastic Four movie they've ever done. Like it's kind of because like it's just
It's a little generous, John.
I know it's very generous. It's very good. I don't have it second, but like on a you could do worse watching that. I was binging on a similar marathon. I was binging the old 70s Captain America stuff, like the 79 stuff, and and then I'd be the Matt Sargent or the Matt Salinger 90 stuff. So like I was binging that before I got to 94's Fantastic Four, and 94's Fantastic Four blew all of those things away, where I was like, all right, here's where ambition meets commitment, and you get a better result versus really lazy stuff from the 70s Captain America and even the 90s Captain America. So like I said, on a rainy day with the winds blowing right, it's the second best Fantastic Four movie they've ever done. So I know, generous.
Yes,
Close.
it's very generous, but that's what we're here to talk about, is get people's perspectives, and to say that the 94 Fantastic Four, in the opinion of anybody, could be the second best one is it shows that you can't just write it off as like, oh, that's the cheesy one that they just did for legal reasons, right? I do want to ask, there is a character, thinking about first steps. There's a character in the 94 film called the Jeweler, but I swear I feel like they just couldn't get the rights to call him Mole Man or something.
That's right,
because that's what he
exactly
was.
right.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
And so they kind of vamped him almost a Batman villain from '66. Yeah, they wanted it to be Mole Man. They didn't have the rights to it, and that was going to cost them all the more. I mean, at the end of the day, this was done to keep the copyright away from Marvel, and so it was done as quickly and cheaply as possible, albeit with a certain amount of heart and commitment, even though it was a bare bones budget. I'm a little less inclined to give it sort of the endorsement. I think if you watch it as a purely kind of silly film, it is entertaining, but I think the thing that makes it work a little bit is I think the four characters in the concept of the original Fantastic Four comics work. It's a fun idea. These four different people, their four different powers, how they work together, how they deal with their new abilities. That plays. And I think it played in the comics. It played in the cartoon version in the 70s, which was cheap too. And maybe even through those the 2005 and 2007 films. But I dare say the one thing that I think this film maybe was a little bit of a poster boy for is, after the success of Superman and the money they poured into that, as well as what they did with Spider-Man and in 2000, well, I mean, I think they realized that you now have to make these things look good. I mean, because otherwise, I kept watching and reminded me when I was a kid of watching Electra Woman and Dyna Girl on television. It looked like it was done for $1.98, not $1 million. And, they're kind of committed to it, but my God, some of the Sue Storm effects, I mean, you can literally see that they just moved a slate to reveal her, reveal this. Oh, now she's not invisible. I mean, some of the 70s television shows out of Universal looked like $10 million compared to some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think after that, as they were doing these, and I give Marvel and Sony credit for when they approached Spider-Man and Iron Man respectively, they realized they had to put money in it. And yet you'll remember that one of the big complaints about the first Spider-Man, which was done in 2002, is that they didn't spend enough money on it. It looks good. It doesn't look great. By the time they did Spider-Man 2 and they had the Doc Ock story, they learned their lesson and said, you know what? We better spend the money on this. And I think that was always a problem when they're looking. I mean, it plagued the Superman sequels too, as the Salkinds didn't want to spend that much money on it. And the one thing I'll give all of the MCU and I think DC since then is that stuff is you have to make that stuff look good today. I mean, even if you watch television today, like if you're watching the umpteenth NSI show that they've got down in Sydney now, it looks great. May not be great acted, might not be the best written story, but these days you cannot make films that look like shit unless you're really going to be an independent. You do it for $40,000 and you get what you paid for. But I mean, if you're on a national network or doing a studio film, there better be money spent on it. And maybe it's too much money, but I think this one, if anything, just doesn't stand up to knowing what we can now achieve with special effects. And a lot of that is decades of CGI and time and stuff, but their heart's in the right place on a lot of respects, but the terribleness of the production is just sort of hard to get past.
I know.
I love the
Well,
terribleness. I love.
But I mean, even like with Batman, Batman, they're climbing up the side of a building, and they're shooting at regular, but they have Sammy Davis Jr. coming out of the floor. I mean, they're letting you know that they know they're doing this bad. We're here. It's like, well, that's the best we can do for Sue Storm. It's like, yeah, I guess so.
But there's sort of there's something about that though, Jeff. Knowing that it was an ultra low budget, the fact that it came out where you could see that there were people on every level of production who were trying, and working against or trying to work with the limitations that they had, instead of literally just phoning it in. I mean, this movie could have been a lot worse. I totally get where you're coming from, and there's nothing. There are a few things that annoy me more than going to see a movie that costs like $250 million, and you're like, oh, that effect looks terrible.
Or they didn't have the script ready when they spend all this money on something.
Right.
I'll say one quick thing just as a sort of comparison. And I think everybody here maybe is aware of it, but it comes closest in a way, for me anyway, of reminding me a little bit of the way I felt when I watched V on television, the miniseries in I think 78, and then I think the sequel was in 81 or 2 maybe. They didn't have the money there either. They spent a lot of money on that. It was a miniseries, and they had tons of special effects and everything else, but you could see their cleverness in shooting around the fact that they didn't have that. There's some of that in this Fantastic Four too, where they make up for it with the gumption of the actors or whatever they're attempting to do. But again, I think we've gotten to a point now here in 2025 where stuff has to look great. It doesn't necessarily play great, but generally speaking, cinematography and those sort of below the line sort of ideals pretty much have to be good looking, whether it's television, movies, or whatever. It's almost unacceptable to have that kind of stuff anymore in films. But back in the 90s, they were still half-assing some of that stuff. I mean, syndicated television half-assed it too. I don't know if you've ever saw Silk Stockings, but they shot it on location, and they went outside to look good, and then they go into the studio and they put neon lights all over everything because they didn't have any sets.
Well, Marvel TV show, the TV movies from Marvel those are rough. The Thor and versus Hulk. Yeah. Those were with Lou Ferrigno. I mean, Hulk by himself was okay. The Incredible Hulk TV show by itself was okay. When they tried to do those Marvel property crossovers, those were
I still love them though, because it's like, oh my god, I got Thor, Daredevil. Like when you're an 80s kid and this is all you can get. It was the best.
Well, do you remember Peter Parker, played by one of the kids from The Sound of Music, Nicholas Hammond? Yeah, it was. I mean, they couldn't even get his suit halfway decent, and yet that was kind of a big thing when we were in that era. So kids, I think it's very kid-like. Maybe it's good for kids, and more than
it's a time capsule of it all. Like in '94, that's the best we could do. In '78, that was the best we can do. In those '80s, 1989 with Hulk, that was the best we can do. So we took it. We didn't know what was going to come post 2000.
That's one question I had, and I'll let Katie answer this because I want to get her perspective on '94, and then we're going to move on to 2005. We're going to do a big time jump. I hate to cut anybody off, but want to keep the train moving. But as far as this, 1994, these special effects, the movie was unreleased, so I don't know how people saw it, if they saw it for another decade or whatever, just on like crappy bootlegs. And by then, maybe it was just, it would have been a neat time capsule to see if this had come out and if people would have been impressed by it. Because of 1994, you had Batman, you had some of the more polished movies, but
Jurassic Park. That's
right. The year before,
water.
Right, but considering Steven Spielberg was also working with a gargantuan budget and a lot of time and a great script, but I guess my point is like The Thing. I remember seeing pictures of that like in Starlogs, and I was like, "Hey, they're making a Fantastic Four movie." It was a little tiny picture, and I saw the thing. I'm like, "That looks really cool." And in practice, like watching on screen, you kind of are reminded of those Ninja Turtle costumes from 1990, especially with the mouth movements and the weird teeth and everything. So I don't know. We are kind of ragging on it, possibly rightfully so, for being kind of awful looking. But I'm just wondering if anybody, even when this came out, if they're like, this is all right looking, because even if it came out 10 years later, we're still only in like Spider-Man 2 territory. So we don't have like modern Marvel, Iron Man, and onwards budgets to look at. But Katie, let's. What do you think of Fantastic Four '94?
So to quote Drop Dead Gorgeous, I didn't understand the assignment, and I've only watched. I have watched the 2005 and 2007, and then the atrocity that was Miles Teller. But I was more focused on 2025. I have not watched the 1994. However, looking at the cast and all that stuff, I understand why they cast most of these people. I mean, with Jay Underwood, you've got him in The Boy That Could Fly and Uncle Buck. Alex Hyde White just came off being David Morse in Pretty Woman. Because when I saw him, like, oh yeah, I remember him. And then looking at the IMDb, how, as you guys were saying, it's $1 million. The release date was 2021. And it's like, Stan Lee said, it's like, this was never meant for anyone to see it. So, and from what I'm hearing, I can understand why, because even with the budget of $1 million, it's going to be this, this is right after, like you said, right after Jurassic Park. If anyone says like, this sucks, and no one's going to come out like, well, the budget was on, like, I don't want to hear it. It still sucks. Yeah. So it's already at a 3.8 on IMDb. This is obviously this is prior to IMDb and all stuff. That would be even less numbers if you're going, but it would have had the nostalgia factor. And with the people that starred in it, I can definitely see people just wanting to see it just for that, because, Jay Underwood had that, he goes from the dick in Uncle Buck to then playing the boy who could fly and stuff like that. And then he was also in a movie after that that had to do with SA. So not great look for him, but he's going with all the different angles on this stuff. But there's a number of people in this film that I have no idea. What I do like, though, is that each one of the four were in the 2025 version. So good for them. You got a little bit of that, which I think that's a nice little,
nod to it.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
in that circle, because no one else in any of those movies, in any of the other Fantastic Four movies, are in this 2025 version. So I think that's a little tipping the hat. Thank you for opening the door and showing us the way. We will close it tightly behind you and lock it and throw away the key.
Well, who knows? Maybe they'll do a restoration of this version and put it as like an extra, like a hidden feature on the First Steps physical media release. Can you imagine this movie in 4K? Yikes. All right, let's move on to 2005. Tim Story directing. We'll kind of bunch the 05 and 07 movies together because they're very similar. There's not a huge difference between them stylistically. There's not even a big continuity between them, except Dr. Doom's the kind of the carryover villain between them, but it does feel very much like episodic film sequel movie making, which I kind of miss. This was before the big interconnected universe of Marvel. It was the year before Iron Man came and blew everything wide open. So what you have here is, again, it's pretty much the origin of the Fantastic Four with a bit of a twist. In this case, Reed Richards and Ben Grimm are going to Victor Von Doom for funding for their giant space project, and Jessica Alba, who plays Sue Storm, as a former love interest of Reed Richards, who's played by Jan Griffith, which I had wrestled with how to pronounce his name, so I finally looked it up, and it is nothing like it looks. So
Griffud, right?
Griffud, no, Griffith. It's spelled Griffud, but it's pronounced Griffith. It's one of those weird Welsh things, or Irish.
Just like Ray Fine, like everyone butchers that all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Or Brett Favre.
That's Alabama redneck stuff there. Good luck. Not quite Welsh.
But Johnny Storm is of course Chris Evans, who a few years later would be Captain America, and then also Johnny Storm again in Deadpool Wolverine. But the conceit here is that they go into space. There's the horrible accident, and they all come back changed. Now, I had not watched this movie in 20 years before doing my homework for here, because I didn't like it. I didn't respond to it because I felt like they just spent the entire movie in the Baxter building recovering from the space accident and, you know, trying to figure out what to do with their powers. And then Dr. Doom shows up in the street and they kind of go down to have a fight and then the movie's over. That's still true-ish. There's a little bit more going on than I recall, but perhaps it's the hindsight of looking back through, you know, these 20 years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the DCEU, where everything is connected and convoluted and building on top of each other, and the infection of the James Gunn / Joss Whedon Marvel humor TM, that it's just refreshing to go and watch a sci-fi action comic book comedy that just, it's comfy. They get the characters right. I love the dynamic and the banter. I like Julian McMahon as a presence, but his voice, specifically in the sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer, where he first encounters the Silver Surfer, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on with you? You're from space." I'm like, no, you sound like Paul Lynde trying to be cool. I don't know. He doesn't have a Latvian accent. I don't even know what a Latvian accent sounds like. So, and essentially the plot of both movies, I recapped the first one. The second one is very similar to First Steps in a lot of ways. The Fantastic Four have to deal with the Herald of Galactus, the Silver Surfer, who comes to prepare the Earth to be eaten by this planet-devouring monster, aka Unicron. The Fantastic Four kind of make friends with him, and there's a couple of self-sacrifices in there. And then they leave it open for a sequel that never materialized. So, Fantastic Four 2005, N07 Silver Surfer. Jeff, let's start with you. Thoughts?
I think they cast some pretty good actors, maybe miscast. I'm not sure that Jessica Alba is Sue Storm, but they gave it the college try. I mean, certainly Chris Evans became a known property. I think he got the best reviews of it. There was a banter and fun to it. I think my biggest criticism of it, looking back at it now, and not really remembering exactly what I thought of it so many years ago, was that it leaned a little bit into the silliness. You know, like when they have, Reed's arms doing all kinds of shtick, and it's not particularly convincing looking anyway. I'm not sure that it wasn't still aimed at kids, which I think a lot of this material tends to sort of default to, like, well, this one's for the whole family, which means it's leveled down a little bit. But I think it's watchable, and I think some of it is cheeky and clever, and some of it not so much. I mean, it's a little heavy-handed with lines like, "Oh, you do all the heavy lifting," or you don't even see me, Reed. It's like, really?
Well, that's going back to, that's something that they,
I know, but
I'm not saying they cribbed from the '94 version, but it's something that this series gradually shook off like a evolutionary tale.
Right. But I mean, you see that, and by today's standards, that stuff seems not only on the nose, but maybe making sure the kids get it, that they understand this and stuff. But I tell you, I think these two are more watchable than Katie said, the awful Miles Teller version. I don't find much good in that version. They take but I mean, I don't want to get ahead of us. We'll get to that. But I mean, I think these are watchable and entertaining in maybe similar ways that Mark and Don expressed about the '94 version, albeit leveled up on a number of levels, but still not quite standing up the way the better films in this genre have for standing the test of time.
Okay. Katie, since this was part of the homework that you did do for the show, I'm just teasing. The fact that you haven't seen the '94 version, you're not missing a ton, but I would recommend it at some point checking out, because I think it's worthwhile, if nothing else, for context. So what did you make of Tim Story's efforts?
Tim Story's efforts, it's funny because thinking back on the 2005, 2007, whatever year, the middle atrocity, and then the 2025, it's like the 2005, 2007, I feel like there were characters who were dealing with a lot of confusion regarding what was going on. The Miles Teller one, there's just so much anger about what happened to him. And then with 2025, I feel like they're more settled. It's also redemption, and like Reed is still feeling bad about what happened to all of them, and he puts it all on him. With the 2005, I'll be honest, Chris Evans, baby. I mean, when they have the trailer of him in that you know, with the thermometer in his mouth, and Maria Menounos was like, "Wow, you're hot." Oh, thank you. Yes, yes, you are, sir. Yes, you are. Skiing, going into thing hot tub because he's like burning a hole like on the Mwah, thank you, movie gods. I was very aware of Chris Evans before this film, but he, you know, did a couple things. He wasn't as like really buff as he got to be in Captain America. But let's be honest, I mean, the man's got a bod.
Okay, let's talk about the quality of the movie. I understand.
That is the quality of the movie, though. She's right on.
Oh, but he's funny. He's very funny in it, too. He was good with the quips.
Funny. I mean, he's funny in tons of stuff. Like, he's got a personality, and it usually shows almost possibly too much in a number of his films. It really calmed it down. I feel like he had to calm it down when he did Captain America, which I think that also opened up more things for him, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But with this, you know, pour some out for Julian McMahon. I really wish he had more of a, I don't know. I feel like after this, he went to Nip Tuck and sort of like he was in The Surfer recently, which I was very excited. It's like, look at him. Hasn't aged a bit and all that stuff. And then he died. And like looking back at what he was doing at this, you know, he was in Charmed and then he did this. I feel like something happened with the film career that should have happened, but I would have liked to have seen him. Like, if I kind of wish he would have had a little cameo in this recent Fantastic Four. Ewan Griffith, whatever, however you say his name, was fine. You know, you've got a number of, Michael Chiklis, who had just come off like winning the Emmy, and this was kind of like, I feel like his David Caruso, you know, big movie moment that sort of didn't come to pass. But I mean, I think he was a great clobbering time. Honestly, of all the ones that I've heard with his voice, his is the one that I really respond to. And yeah, Jessica Alba was Jessica Alba. I think she's fine. I don't really see them as siblings. I think that was kind of a weird casting of the two, but you know, they're going for star power and whatnot. Is it a fun movie? Yes. Even looking at the Silver Surfer one, honestly, I really don't remember if Galactus is in there, or I remember Silver Surfer. I do not remember anyone else.
It's like the Cloud.
He doesn't look like that. He doesn't look like that.
Well, because we never actually see Galactus. What we see is the
then
space
I know I've got
cloud.
some brain fog, but I'm glad that at least I don't like. If
it was fog. It was literal fog.
Right.
Okay.
It was like the space cosmic fog that was. Well, it was cool because
cosmic cloud.
Yes, very much, Captain. But we do see a couple of like space lightning strikes where you do see the famous outline of his giant forked head, and you kind of like, oh, there's a promise there, but he gets vanquished before he can show up. Which, from a conceptual storyline angle, I can see that's kind of neat. But for fans who they see the Silver Surfer on screen, the great Doug Jones and voiced by Lawrence Fishburne, they're expecting Galactus, and they're like, well, maybe we'll see him next time. But I want to dig back in here, and Mark and Don will get to you in a second, or maybe you can jump in and kind of give your highlights here. We talked about Jessica Alba. I, especially on the rewatch, I thought she was pretty great for the material that she was as written. The Sue Storm has been kind of a tough nut to crack in each of these films, but I think in this one, she kind of held her own. She was kind of the hot flavor of 2000, the mid 2000s when this movie came out. So it would be very easy to cast her just as arm candy, but I felt she was, kind of assertive and smart and really held her own. And there was some nuance to what was going on with her character there. So I guess my question is, what's wrong with Jessica Alba?
Don, you can go ahead if you want.
I'll be short. She is eye candy who is not prepared for heavier delivery. You hired her, I think Into the Blue was like 2003. Like, she's the hottest thing in the whole wide world, and you put her in a hot part and you make her on. Like, and then you do the invisibility takes very close things where we all can dream. So like, that's why she's here. I don't know if at the time she was quite suited for this level of science fiction dialogue. You hear about this from people who do like hospital shows and sci-fi TV shows, where even just getting out the jargon, you just don't sound convincing doing it. And
But she's not really jargony in this part. I mean, that's what I guess I'm trying to find, are there moments in her performance throughout the film where like, or both films where you're like, this just isn't working. This is weak. She doesn't sound up for it. Or I mean, because I'm struggling with what is the issue here?
The mopey ex-boyfriend stuff in the first movie is a drag, where like, there woulda, coulda, shoulda, they're going to be together, but like they really hammer the jilted ex-girlfriend thing.
That's not performance. That's story. I'm talking about. Are you
her performing it is terrible then too? So yeah.
Because you can if you're called upon to perform a bad script.
Yeah.
And you're contracted to do it. I mean, we just talked about 1994's Fantastic Four, everyone putting in their best efforts, even if the story wasn't great or the production values. So I guess my question is, I'm trying to separate Jessica Alba's performance from the material that she is asked to deliver.
Well, I was fortunate to do a Patreon episode of this actually with Lamont, who I didn't realize, good man, horror miser Monty G, is a devout and really extensive Fantastic Four fan. So I learned a lot last night.
I thought you were going to say Jessica Alba fan.
No, Fantastic Four fan. He started it, reading it in the 70s, so he's been through it. He followed all of that. He's a huge fan, and I learned a lot last night that I knew nothing about, which was great. But he also dropped some nuggets about this film. We joke about how Jessica Alba was hired because she was the attractive, the it person, the it woman of the time, because mostly more for her looks. Apparently it has come out later on in production, the director would stop her if she tried to do more than just be on camera, just be the beauty. Apparently there are actual reports and such. Now I didn't look it up, I didn't have a chance to, but he said, because he followed it, apparently, the director on set would actually, if she tried to do more, tried to ask, hey, how would you like me to deliver? He's like, don't, just stand there, say this type of thing. There's a reason why a lot of her scenes are where her clothes are not.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm invisible and I'm naked. Oh no, I'm on fire. I'm on fire and I'm naked. Yeah.
So I didn't have a chance to check it, but he's followed the Fantastic Four extensively through, and apparently there have been reports in that of how she was treated on set versus some of the others, and it wasn't very well. And after hearing that explains some things with her performance and with the way her part is written too, and how she's directed. I mean, it's the Kristen Stewart angle. When I just saw Twilight, I'm like, oh my God, who is Kristen Stewart and why was she here? Why is everybody hyping her? Then I saw Kristen Stewart's independent work with a different director. Fantastic, like Personal Shopper. I mean, I'm watching her stuff that wasn't Twilight, and I'm like, where was this person? It's just like with Snow White and the Huntsman. Sometimes it's the director. They say, you need the director to give a certain direction, and if you don't have that director actually helping and assisting the actor in some way, or telling them and giving them some direction, it can fall flat. And I think that's what happened with Jessica Alba here, is the fact that she was cast for, unfortunately, superficial purposes, and she wanted to act and do more, but she may have been limited. Again, I'm not sure the reports on it, but it makes a lot of sense if you hear that and then you watch her performance and her role on screen. And Chris Evans, for this film, Chris Evans has a wonderful personality. It is a full personality, though. It is a very screen presence personality to when he is on, even if he's delivering the simplest of lines, he takes over a scene, even subtly or not so subtly, he will take over a scene. And so these two films, I think, if they didn't have him in it, I don't think people would have regarded these quite as well as some of them. He helps carry some of that, not even on purpose. It's not to shy away from Chickless and your Mr. Fan. They did fine, but I think it's because of his personality that helps carry that entertaining part. Totally. And they do lean still more, though, into the comic part with it. Watching it again, I didn't realize it was quite that comic booky when I first watched them, but going back and especially when I marathoned them, I'm like, okay. But it is interesting seeing the evolution of them trying this out, because when we get to the 2025 version, 2025 so far has borrowed from the 94, the 2005, and 2007 films so far.
Very much so.
Borrowed either spiritually or directly. It cribbed the best little elements and nuggets from those films and included it in it.
That too, Mark, that was from the original comics. Let's not forget that's had
Right.
40, 50 years of established character and stuff that they're all interpreting. So I think, that's true. I think what you're getting at, though, as a question, though, Ian, and it's maybe the bigger question about this, is I think a lot of times this comes down to approach, and I think certain people approach it as this is a comic book movie, and other people approach it as this is a movie where I've got to make this character believable. And I mean, you've heard stories about Joel Schumacher when he was making Batman and Robin. He would say, "This is the comic book movie, people," and like we could. And then Tommy Lee Jones, who's one of the better actors, is overacting wildly because he thinks that means I get to be ridiculous, like I'm a cartoon, a living cartoon, and yet the DC and the Marvel comic books are never like that. They're very serious, and I think the people who treat this as like this has to be given a certain amount of respect and more than two dimensions and stuff like that. Maybe they thought poor Jessica Alba was being cast as eye candy. She was very good in Dark Angel. I think, it's tricky sometimes playing these kind of roles, but every once in a while you'll see people who sort of condescend to the material, whether the director or somebody. I mean, I think this all kinds of condescended in large part because they didn't think it was worth spending the money to make it right.
Right. I'll drop one more thing on the 07 one. I actually prefer the 07 one to the 05 one. I know most people malign the sequel, but you get that origin story out of the way and you jump into Silver Surfer. It moves really well. It's a fun movie. I know the Galactus
it has more
Cloud,
action in it too.
It does. The Galactus Cloud is silly and not traditional to what it really could be. Jessica Alba is given a little bit more consequence to do in that movie. She's kind of the Alicia Masters part to tame the Silver Surfer, and I appreciate that. And the movie itself is PG. You could show that to a room full of kids, and I think there's some value in that. Right around 07 when things were being very anti-hero tweener, like Wolverine was in his main stride where everything was getting edgy in a hurry, where for once you got a movie you could literally take the family to for Marvel's first family. And I thought that was a spot-on tone to use in the second one, where the second one went down to PG versus staying the PG-13 the first one was. I was very surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan. Revisiting 05, I appreciate it more, but I still am a bigger fan of the 07 Rise of the Silver Surfer. And I think, which for reasons, I've got a theory that regarding the 2015 film, which we're about to talk about. But I think a lot of people rag on the 07 version because of the Galactus problem. Because they've been waiting to see Galactus, the giant, purple guy, and they get a fart cloud. It's kind of like what they did with Green Lantern, with Ryan Reynolds. That ended up being a yellow fart cloud. Yeah, a mustard cloud. But you get past that and you just evaluate it as a movie. Yes.
Star Trek 79. We can't really create a character. Let's just throw a bunch of smoke on the screen and call that the villain.
Yes, smoke and even some mirrors. But I think that's, if I had to get into the fans' heads at the time, because I was baffled coming out of the theater, in 07, and then like hearing about, did you see the Rise of the Silver Surfer? Yeah, it was terrible. I'm like, what are you talking about? I think a lot of that is sort of the decision, rightfully or wrongly, to not include an actual Galactus. But I imagine that was probably because I'd spent so much making the damn thing already. And also, it's a 90-minute movie. I mean, who remembers when comic book movies were 90 minutes long? You have this as a modern Marvel film at 3 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever, even 2. Then you put Galactus in there and you have him show up, and basically it would be Fantastic Four first steps. But as an effort, I think the 05 and 07 versions are a lot of fun, and worthy of people giving them a shot. It's strange to think that they're 20 years old now, and they do have a reputation as being not very good. And I almost guarantee you much of that reputation is not earned by people today going back and watching them and saying they're not very good. They think they're not good because they've heard they're not good.
I agree.
All right. So let's talk about a movie that many people agree is not good. Four Stick.
This is where I turn into Katie. I've never seen it. I sat it out those 10 years ago. I haven't rewatched it for this, so I'll take the Katie spot on the bench for this one.
All right.
I can speak against it if you want somebody to speak ill of the dead.
The dead, they're still alive.
Well,
Kate
I'm just
Mara?
saying, as the franchise killer at the time, they didn't get a sequel or anything else after it. To take that group of actors and to give them this, I think, a lot of material. Plus, it takes forever to get going. Do we really need to see them as teenagers in science class? And it just, let's get this thing moving. It was painful. And then it got kind of mean and serious. And I'm not sure if any of the casting was exactly right either. Kate Mara, who's very good at playing cold, played this sort of like she's played villainous characters in a few things, and it didn't work. And I don't know. This was my least of the efforts. So, but that's my thought on it.
So you're putting this below 1994.
Well, let me put it this way. Of the actual movies that were made as a legitimate film, this is 4 of 4.
Okay.
I like the cartoon version in the 70s better than the 2015 version of Fantastic Four, which was on when I was a kid.
And that's totally valid, and I get it. Katie, you look like you want to jump in with something.
Yes, with this, when you were saying that, with the 2005 and 2007 movies, they're 90 minutes. It really goes along. What's one of the biggest problems about the 2015 movie is that it's an hour and 40 minutes, and it feels like it's over 2 hours long. And the exposition of the characters, seriously, it's like, Jesus Christ, what are we doing? Like, how long do we have to go on with this? And then they finally get there. I love Miles Teller. I love Michael B. Jordan. I love that Kate Mara and
Jamie Bell,
end up getting married, having kids, all that stuff. And I like Toby Kebbell. I don't like any of them in this movie. I don't know if it's the casting. I don't know if it's the writing. I think it's kind of both. But like I said, I feel like where the 2005, 2007 were like, what are these powers? I don't know. We're going to do this, had that more of a peppy thing. This was just so dark and angry and bitter. And I get it. You're on fire 24/7. That's going to be hard to date. And there's other issues going on, but I don't know. It just was just such a downer and just felt so long that, I was not surprised when it didn't get a sequel. And I was very surprised to see Miles Teller in a role like that. I just feel like he was very, very miscast because
they're all too young. They're all too young.
And that's one of the things, all of these characters, are Reed and Sue are supposed to be like in their late 30s and early 40s. And these are people who are like obviously in their 20s. And maybe that was a little thing with the first one. I felt like there was a little, these people should have been a little bit older in the 2005, 2007.
Well, let's talk about 94 because there's a 10-year time jump in 1994 after the accident. Really? Yeah. Oh, that's right, Katie. You haven't seen it. So this is something to look out for because it might raise some eyebrows. I know it did for me. The storms, Johnny and Sue's mother runs a boarding house and Reed Richards is staying there as a college student, but he still looks like he's about 30 years old.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, he's like, okay, I'm going off to the lab. And young Johnny and Sue are like maybe 11, 12 years old. Mm-hmm. And Sue has the biggest crush on Reed, and Reed kind of reciprocates. It's almost like in 10 years,
weird.
Wink, wink.
It's weird.
Like, 94 for you.
It's not.
Yeah, I don't like
this
at
fantastic.
all.
Fantastic Four to life.
Well.
Yeah,
that part did not age well, though. I when I watched it, like I said, when I marathoned these yesterday, that surprised me. I'm like, okay, we're just gonna keep going. Let's roll right along. That's a little awkward. A lot awkward. It was just weird choice.
Well, Mark, jump in on 2015 here.
2015 version would even have Zack Snyder going, "Oh damn." because especially watching it, watching the other three back to back, they overcompensated. And it's one of those things where it was one of the things that in spirit, it's kind of why I didn't quite get into the 2025 version, which we'll get into. It's not mean-spirited that way, but they overcompensated in you're basically taking a group of characters who, if you stand alone, look at them, are goofy as hell. Let's face it, stretchy guy, rock guy, girl who could turn invisible, and guy who can set himself on fire. Okay, it's like Green Lantern. If you don't handle the material in a very specific way, no one's going to buy into these characters. They're just going to be goofy gimmicks. Okay, and so what 2015 was trying to do was trying to ground it and bring a seriousness to it, but like way over to the other side of the bell curve. So instead of like the 2005 and 7 version, which still have wah moments, literally you could hear it mentally in your head for a few of the jokes and that, they went like, we're going way over here. And now you're getting something that doesn't even resemble a family, the first family, any family, really. You're looking at this Reed Richards, you're like, yeah, melt his ass down and start to use him as silly putty, because his character, I haven't ever really liked Reed Richards, truth be told, but in this one in 2015, he's really not likable. You know, they took Johnny Storm, who in the other 3 iterations is charismatic, and no offense to the actor at all, he did great in the role, but it's written angry and not charismatic at all. You're looking at this going, this is not, Johnny Storm has this history from at least the movies, because that's the most that I know him from, has been the more charismatic character. He's been the face of the A-team, basically. And in here, he's not, you know? I mean, if it wasn't for their powers, you wouldn't be able to tell these characters apart, any of them, because they're all written very similar. They kind of mesh together, and this story goes nowhere. It's serving no purpose. Having it all take place in this alternate reality, Doctor Doom is just a mess. I don't know what they were trying to do with that. Julian McMahon, I thought, would have made a great Doctor Doom had he had a better written Doctor Doom. He did not have his Doctor Doom. Nobody knew how to write him. And in this one, they just abandon it completely and just go, okay, yeah, his name's Doom and he wears a cloak. Okay, this is what we're going to do with it. What about the comic source material? Fuck it. We're just going to go. You know, that's what it feels like 2015 did. And I think they overcompensated, because this is material that, if not handled properly, can come off very goofy and unserious. And so they tried to make it serious, but they went way too far, to the point where it was not enjoyable. Watching all 4 of them back to back, I watched that one. It was a slog, and I couldn't tell you. I'm like, what was the point? The other 3 at least had points, had superhero points, defeat this bad guy. In Fantastic Four Stick, there isn't even really that goal of defeat the bad guy. You discover him afterwards, and they go after him. But even, I think it's a mess. I think they were just trying to do something different with it, because they looked at the other ones and go, this is too goofy. We got to ground this and bring this more serious. But they didn't know how to do it properly. And so what you get is what you get, which is this film that didn't need to be called Fantastic Four. It could have been called anything. And they could have changed the powers slightly and tweaked it, and it just been a standalone superhero film. And it might even done a little better than this.
Yeah.
Does anyone put any stock into the 2015 one where the director's cut got meddled with by the studio? And like, do you think there's a better version of this out here, a la Zack Snyder, or there couldn't be?
No.
Well, I mean, it was a very troubled, production.
Okay.
But look, this is not going to surprise anyone. And we're an hour in, and we haven't talked about the brand new feature, which we will in a few minutes, and we'll give that some proper time. But I do appreciate this discussion, because we are, I think, building on the history of this in terms of movies, and I really do love this. But I'm going to be a lone defender of Fantastic Four 2015. I think there's a lot going on here. I am also glad that it didn't do well, because by the end of the movie, where they are coming together to become a superhero team, that feels wrong to me. This movie doesn't feel like a superhero film. It feels like almost a one-shot Amblin film from the 1980s, where you've got the kind of the down on their luck kids. I mean, you're right, Jeff. They're not cast too young. They are written as high school teenagers who will then grow into multi-feature franchise characters who will become adults. It's the same thing that they did with Tobey Maguire, but he was like 30 when he was playing Peter Parker in high school in 2002 or whatever.
Yeah,
true.
But it's a very deliberate choice. This isn't the Fantastic Four we know, because they are reintroducing a new cinematic universe version of these characters to us. And I think I didn't like this in 2015 because by that point we were square in the middle of MCU. And even though it had its kind of dark and more adult chapters, it was still kind of zippy and fun and very much rooted in a comic book mythology. This is, again, it's like an 80s dark science fiction movie where the characters, if you don't want to call them superpowers, they get like these kind of mutations that they all have to deal with. They do resort to Skybeam, which I was having severe flashbacks back to the era where everything was Skybeam for like 7 years.
Yes, Skybeam.
My goodness. One trend I hope they never bring back. I hope there's not a point in like 20 years where they're like, oh, let's do movies like they did in the aughts. We'll go all retro and bring back Skybeam. No, I will boycott those till my dying breath. But no, I disagree about the casting. I think I liked Miles Teller a lot. I think there was a differentiation enough between the characters. They all had a lot of emotional baggage and things going on, and a lot of guilt, and the kind of abusive family from with Ben's kind of character. You had the awkward relationship with Johnny and Sue and their father. There was like that whole kind of like adopted relationship going on, which is something that was also kind of carried over inadvertently probably from the 2005 version, because Katie, as you mentioned, like how are Jessica Alba and Chris Evans brother and sister? Well, I think the answer is probably either a mixed parentage or adoption. So yeah, it doesn't work as the beginning of a Fantastic Four franchise, because if I had to watch another of these where they're fighting a Josh Trank version of a Fantastic Four villain, I don't think it would have been enjoyable. I liked the idea of what they did with Doctor Doom here. He gets kind of sucked into this nether world that they discover, this alternate dimension, and he disappears for however long he's in there. And he kind of comes back almost like it's very Khan Noonien Singh, where he's coming back across the wasteland to wreak vengeance on the people who left him there. And it's weird. And I like that Ben Grimm as the Thing he looks the least Thing-like out of all the iterations. He kind of reminded me of those rock monsters from Galaxy Quest in a way. But again, it's like, what if we took all of this seriously? What would it be like to actually be on fire all the time? You wouldn't be Chris Evans like, hey, I'm going to still use this to get chicks. You'd probably be horrified. And I appreciated the kind of horror movie elements that were in this iteration of the Fantastic Four. So I think it's defensible if you look at it at a certain lens, but that is a very specific lens. And as a comic book movie, it's pretty poor. So I'll give it that.
Well, and it's also jarring, like I said, if you marathon them. Like I said, when I marathon them, when you marathon them back and back, you're like, la, 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 la. You're like, holy, what the hell?
Yeah.
But by itself, I get what you're saying, Ian, and you're right. By itself, as a one-off, like a one-shot that you'd pull off, that they did an alternate storytelling for Fantastic Four, you'd only get one issue. I could see that to where it would be interesting because you're exploring these angles. But for a franchise, I couldn't see it maintaining itself, even if it did make bank the first time.
And I think it's weird because Trank, his kind of calling card, the thing that I think got him this movie was the film he did, Chronicle.
Chronicle's good.
Chronicle,
very good.
Damn good.
Yeah. And it very much shares like this movie would take place in the Chronicle universe.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of messed up, but also kind of true. All right, let's talk about a different. Oh, sorry, Katie, go ahead.
Oh, wait, just looking at IMDb. I know you were talking about like if there is a director's cut, and apparently Josh Trank made a comment about how he had a fantastic version of the film, and it's like, and would have received great reviews, and you'll probably never see it. That's reality, though. And they said that's probably cost the movie $10 million in opening weekend ticket sales. But there's also the first one that says Stan Lee declined to make a cameo in the film, and I'm like, that says more than any other thing I need to read about this right there. I mean,
that's bad.
Look, I think Josh Trank has or had some talents. I don't know. I honestly don't know if he's done anything since this movie 10 years ago.
Did he do the Capone one with Tom Hardy?
Yeah.
Was that him?
Yeah. Chewing carrots. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I will say that line you read, Katie, at the outset of like, oh, there's a totally fantastic version that cost $10 million in box office. That's the Canadian girlfriend excuse.
True.
You can't meet her, but she's totally a model. You guys.
Yeah. George Glass.
Yeah.
George Glass.
We're gonna jump. Speaking of alternate universes, well, hold on. I'm gonna pull over.
This counts.
Because I want to pull over because we've got a boatload of comments. I'm going to zip through them because it's a text wall and we got to get to first steps. Sidua says, have not seen the new F4 movie yet. May not for a long time. I did see F4 story in Arrested Development show. Very good. Busy this summer with a real movie about the comics warehouse. Not sure if Hollywood movies are real movies anymore. They are movies shaped megacorp entertainment. All the big summer movies look boring and predictable. Anyway, comics warehouse better. Sidua, that is a perspective, but unless you watch the movies that you're criticizing, you got a couple of legs left to build before you can stand on them. For real movie fans, indie movie fans, 53 Spaceships movie coming late September. It'll be bigger than any summer Hollywood movie.
Sajiwa, your shill is showing. Careful.
Yeah.
Hey, you got it's all about the hustle. Galactus does not look good in this movie. What?
But he looks good on my shelf.
Yeah.
Bring it out, Mark. Bring it out.
Yep. It's time.
Is that thing heavy? It looks heavy.
It's got a little heft to it.
Oh my god, the eyes light up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's $80.
Worth it.
Yeah. My wife measured it. My wife measured it after I brought it home and went to work the next day. She goes, it's almost 2 feet wide.
Is it really?
And then she talked about the Galactus popcorn bucket.
Yeah.
Right.
I was going there too, but you beat me to it.
Of course.
Talk about your Fantastic Four stick.
I thought you were going to say skin.
Oh my god! It's broken.
No, this comes off.
Okay. Oh my god, Mark.
I thought we just watched the chilly scene in the office for a second. Like shit.
Woo! All right. So from the trailer, he looked boring. Yeah. No,
you can't judge it just on the trailer.
No.
And neither can I. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Mm-hmm. Anyway, may drop in if free during the show. Watch Transformers 2 a little bit last night.
Oof. High class cinema there. Wow.
Transformers 2. I want to know the story behind that. Some theaters should swap out Fantastic Four DCPs for an avant-garde kind of experimental underground type movie.
God.
Low budget Spanish movie called El Fantastico about a Zorro type superhero.
I know.
You've always been a dreamer.
Mask of Zorro, but yeah.
Off to go watch a little bit Fantastic Four at my local theater and be back. What? Wait, Mark.
Were you bored with our conversation, Mark?
Yeah. No. See, the wonderful thing about YouTube, when you go to the live version while you're waiting for the countdown, you can fill the comment section ahead of time.
Sure can.
So I put that in there on purpose just to throw a little.
That's funny.
I'm looking here at the timestamps. Yeah, Sajua was in line early. This is all before the show started. Wow. Okay. Too lazy to go watch the movie, getting some pennies and going home to watch this podcast.
Oh my god.
Hot mess.
Next, he's going to be telling about how he separated his whites from the colors when he did his laundry last.
Well, hey, look, it's we're happy to have him here, and this sounds like a very exciting roller coaster of an evening. So good going. Looks like the guy from Game of Thrones is in this movie.
That's
which guy? I don't know.
Pedro.
Okay. Oh, that's right. I was thinking about the 94, 05, 07, and 15 movies. Also, some ARP hottie. Have not seen her in the movies before. Not Zsa Zsa Gabor. What? Speaking of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Slasher Fred says, There's a scene in the Fantastic Four from the
There
early
is.
2000s where Ben is seen wearing a trench coat and hat, much like the way Raphael does. That's kind of that's like a staple from the comics, is him
Yes.
like, on like kind of the Yancey Street look. I think what makes Fantastic Four such an incredible team of heroes is when you think the stereotypes of superheroes, they were usually outsiders, people who were trying to blend in. Yeah, I mean, and also they were scientists. So, I guess Peter Parker was a scientist too, but the kind of a bit more cerebral in terms of the quote unquote just street level heroes. Okay, join the show. Eating some Chinese and drinking lemonades. Good times on a Wednesday night. Battlestar Galactica remake show looked good. 2004, I think. Yep, that's right. On Sci-Fi. Fantastic Four 2015 was a pretty good superhero movie. We just talked about that. I, the sole defender on this panel, disagree with that sentiment, but I take it. Slasher Fred, not Slasher Fed. I'm not assuming anything. The villain, Dr. Doom, is someone who can be seen as those who used to be on the side of good, but becomes corrupted by power that they turn against the people who were once their friends. It's interesting because in each iteration of the movies, there is that kind of a shade. I mean, the Julian McMahon version very much is the evil kind of corporate billionaire guy, but in the 94 version, he was kind of almost like a classroom rival of Reed Richards, but a reluctant partner. Like they had to work together. And then in the 2015 version, it was there was some real camaraderie there on that team. He was the reluctant kind of hacker brought in by the boss man to work on this project. But until things went south in that alternate dimension or whatever, they were pretty tight. That was one of the interesting things about that. It was a different approach to the character. And then in the next one, it's just going to be RDJ. Have not seen the 90s FF movie, but I've seen the other three, not the latest one yet. The 2015 was pretty good. Out of the 5 FF movies, I'd say 2015 is one of the best. Not seen the 2025 one, looks boring, but I'll watch the 25 one at some point. Also the 90s one, just to say I've seen them. Good. Be a completionist. Why not make a thing, movie, or TV show like Hulk? He can go off on his own to have adventures. I think he works better as a team member. The famous catchphrase in all the superhero narratives, with great power comes great responsibility, is not just words of wisdom from Ben Parker to his nephew Peter, but it is a lesson in all of us. Indeed. They did make a thing movie, New York City long ago. It originally began to flop, but it became a cult classic. Really? Cool. Have to look for it. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the 1982 Carpenter. The Thing. No. Yeah, Sejua is asking for the big rock guy, and you're referring to the shape-shifting monster.
It's clobbering time. No.
It's slobbering time with all those tentacles and teeth.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you would call this a superhero series, but Jessica Alba also starred on Dark Angel. Jeff mentioned that, which used to air on Fox, produced by James Cameron, who's no longer a filmmaker, unfortunately. All right, this show is making me more excited about watching the new FF movie. You have done your part for the economy.
There we go.
FF from 2015, the scene where Ben is in hospital, he demands a mirror, is reference to Tim Burton's Batman, where Jack Napier, after having the surgery, also does the same thing.
Yep.
Visually, the 2015 version looked better, probably due to the tech advances that were made since 2007 or so. Silver Surfer still holds up pretty well.
Silver Surfer looks
great.
Good, yeah, he looks great in that for the time it came out.
Speaking of Julian McMahon, there was an episode of the original Charmed called Witches in Tights, where the Hallowell sisters are turned into superheroes. Didn't see that, but I'll have to look that up. Ang Lee's Fantastic Four might be interesting, indeed. Mark's Galactus bit was good.
Pure comedy.
That blonde in front knows her stuff. Fantastic Four. Wow. Katie, are there 2 blondes in fronts?
Get it, girl.
It's me. I just wrote that just like Mark did. So
oh my goodness.
I'm just happy.
That's hilarious.
Just get the comments going. Because at one point, I just want to say, my sister has a cat. There's a lot of stuff being said that doesn't necessarily have to do with the Fantastic Four in some of those comments. So, woohoo!
All right. Well, we are back on track. Katie, you've put us there. So let's talk at long last about Fantastic Four First Steps.
Fantastic Four.
It's a great score.
It is.
It is. It
Knocks it out of the park again.
It's not bad. I got a scotch of criticism, but not bad.
All right, let's hear it. Don,
I'm not going first though. Oh,
yes,
okay,
you
okay.
are.
No,
I'm calling on you.
All right,
Ooh,
check.
soundtrack talk
Got
time.
it.
Let's go, Don.
Yeah. No, not to go right off the bat, but no.
Wait, hold on a
Fantastic
second.
Four.
I'm sorry. One thing.
Yeah.
Before we begin, Jeff, I need a proper introduction to this movie.
Oh. Ooh.
We're going to talk about the Fantastic Four first steps.
Oh, okay.
You have something to share with us.
He's
all right. Sure. I guess so. I mean,
No.
Oh, sorry.
We talked about this earlier today.
Oh, that's right.
In a natural conversation, this kind of came up, and it became a bit. Which, go for it. I'm ruining it. I'm lettering it already.
How quickly I forget. I was going to say, I herald the beginning. I herald its end. I herald Galactus.
You
Mark
make
with the
it
prop.
sound so good. Come on.
This is perfect. All right,
It's
John.
become a quotable meme everywhere.
That's
God love
right.
Julia Garner.
Sean, settle the score for us.
There's no score to settle. This is the best Fantastic Four movie they've ever done. It's very, very good. I wrestle with. I know I'm one of those Captain America: Brave New World guys where if I'm doing the arm wrestling match of which one's the best of 2025, I'm torn. It's not torn in a good way. The movie is very good. I really think they did. I was talking to Katie last night, and this is a podcast about it. I think the family dynamic is something that they've nailed absolutely well in this movie about, emphasizing just who they are as a family and as a cohesive group. I think the other films touched on that in weird ways from 1994, also to where even 2005, 2007, family is there, but they're really just kind of shoving themselves forward to get to action. And this one lingers quite a bit on what the family unit is and what they can do, and how tied they are to each other. The movie is a nice under 2-hour situation, and that makes things move very well. I think my criticisms, to keep the show moving on here a little bit, I think Pedro Pascal is missing a slice of what charm he could have had when he's in kind of doom and gloom scientist mode. I'm not saying he needs to be a materialist. I'm not saying he's got to be Chilean James Bond like he was in that movie, but he's sapped a little bit of what he really could do from an appeal standpoint, where I found myself crazy enough missing John Krasinski from Doctor Strange 2. Like, I feel like he's a hell of a balance between put that beard on him where he's Jack Ryan mode, but at the same time, he can wink at you and be, a doting husband if he needed to be. From a score standpoint, Giacchino's the best in the business. He's the new John Williams. It's a nice score. The choral helps it a lot, but my ears hear the notes, and this is for Mark. My ears hear the notes of the Lightyear score that he did a few years ago. I think he's not that he's James Horner, where he's recycling the same Asian wood flute every damn score, but it's a little bit where Michael has a 10% laziness in what he's doing, and it's
no, Don, hold on. I can't let this stand.
Okay.
Giacchino, all he was doing by cribbing from his own Lightyear score, by infusing that into Fantastic Four First Steps, is guaranteeing that someone somewhere would actually hear that music. Go ahead.
Oh well, hey.
Well, yeah.
I was there for it. Yeah, I like that score in Lightyear, but that's just me. No, like I said, very fine movie. To me, Pascal is the weak link, but not a bad link. This is the best they've done with a storytelling standpoint from a Johnny Storm standpoint to give him something to do other than be the hot guy. Ben Grimm maybe is shafted just a little bit where we could have used an Alicia Masters. I know Natasha Lyonne is a nice proxy for that, but that could have been done better, especially if you're going comic level where Alicia is the linchpin that tames the Silver Surfer. But Vanessa Kirby is the springboard launching pad of this movie. She's the best one of the bunch. She's so damn powerful as a person, as a mother, then as a superhero, and you get all of it in this movie. So this is very fine movie. I'll pass it to the rest.
Well, why don't you decide who to pass it to? I like this idea.
Mark Krawczyk.
Oh, jeez. Okay. The hashtag DC shill, hashtag CBM shill. Okay. Giacchino score is probably one of the best modern scores to come out in the last few years during a superhero film, but that's also up to the sound design because they allowed it to breathe. Every other film that we've gotten may have a great score. You never would know it because of the sound design that modern films have just in general. It fills the sound wall full of different effects, not just the score. And I think Jeff and Don, especially, who are and Katie, who are my lovers of soundtracks, who listen to it constantly, will agree that I think some composers understand that, and that's why we don't get quite as strong scores as we used to, because they're like, no one's going to hear this shit anyway. No offense, pardon my language, but still, simple fact. It just feels like that with some scores. This one, they know the score they have. It comes through. Freaking Incredibles. I mean, this film cribs a lot from Incredibles, but Incredibles was because it was influenced by Fantastic Four. Don't get me wrong. But that's why I think part of the reason the score is so well. Incredibles is still one of the best scores out there, bar none. That score is phenomenal.
Hey, Mark, sorry, real quick. Your mic started to go out for a second. It's back.
Incredibles soundtrack, especially Incredibles 1, is just beautiful. I've listened to that on its own constantly. Here, he's not quite that level, but he's very close. But it's also because the engineers understood it and allowed it to come through, which is what you want for a superhero film. Part of the reason Batman is so good is because of Danny Elfman's score. Part of the reason Superman's moves you so much is John Williams' score. One of the best opening title sequences in film history is Superman with the swooping letters and that. So the music really helps a lot. I enjoyed this film. I didn't enjoy it quite as much as another superhero film. Not quite, almost as much. But I will say I did go back today and see it a second time. I saw Fantastic Four a second time. After my conversation with Lamont last night, who is versed in Fantastic Four, who taught me a lot about the background of these characters, I appreciated Fantastic Four First Steps a little bit more. When I first watched it, and why I didn't quite care for it maybe as much as many, I didn't quite give it 4 stubs. It was 4 3/4, excuse me. It was 3, it wasn't quite 4.
Rounding up its 4, Mark. Rounding up its 4.
What I gave Superman, but that was because I went in cold. I knew nothing about these characters except that they're the first family, and from what I knew of the movies and a couple of the comics with the crossovers of the Marvel properties I watch. So for me, going into this kind of cold and not a fan at first, it didn't hit me as strong as knowing more about it. That's why I get some people's absolute adoration for this film, because knowing and understanding, and I looked some stuff up too about the Fantastic Four, knowing that and seeing this iteration, I get it, why it was a very big film for you, and especially watching the previous iterations, it is the best interpretation. Now, for me, just my personal taste, it's a little too vanilla of a superhero film for me. It's missing some of the things for the characters. I will agree that Sue Storm is the best character in here, written and performed in general. The guys take a side note, which is an interesting thing, because when you marathon the other films, it's usually Johnny Storm and the Thing rivalry that takes front and center with the dynamic of the Fourth. In this one, it's Sue Storm and her dealing with everything. But this film felt afraid to go there, and it makes me wonder how much is sitting on the cutting room floor, because it is a shorter runtime, and I feel we're missing some character pieces in here that could have filled in the blanks for someone who is not familiar with the material. If you are, you're filling in that material, you're with it, right? But now Ian left. But
who's hosted the show now?
Apparently he didn't like it. Sorry, I didn't mean to go so long, but I guess for me, I enjoyed it. I think it's one of the better superhero films to come out. I like where Marvel's going. It's why I call myself the CBM shill now, because we've had 3 comic book films that, outside of some rocky bits, overall, I've enjoyed them all, regardless of if they're DC or Marvel. I think these properties, both DC and Marvel, are going the right direction of a rather competing against each other with, I can outdo this one, like we were getting with the Snyderverse and that. It feels like they're just taking their own directions and making comic book stories they want to tell. And if there's similarities, well, yeah, pick a DC and Marvel property off the shelf, compare them, and you're going to get similar heroes throughout history. So for me, enjoyed it more the second watch. I still have a few problems in the middle, and mostly it's character stuff, because I'm not that familiar, and because it was too straightforward. It felt like it was afraid to take some chances, but I understand why, because this 4 characters are so important to the fandom. You have to handle them with kid gloves and carefully if you want to actually sell them to people. And so they took away the goofiness. They took away a lot of the humor. For me, there was not a lot of humor in First Steps, but I get why. Because the minute you start throwing in a little extra jokes, a little extra humor, now it's getting jokey. You're trying to sell four members who are, like I said, if you just look at them by themselves, their powers are goofy and hard to sell. Just like Green Lantern. Green Lantern's a hard sell. Looks great on print. Don't get me wrong. Looks fantastic on print. He's a hard person to sell, but they almost got him with, in a couple iterations. And so, yeah, there's things they got to handle carefully, and I understand all that. Me personally, I think the second viewing was better, but I think really this is made more for the fans. They took all the little best elements of previous iterations, rolled them together, and I love the sci-fi 60s noir take. I'm big on that. I love that. But there are choices in here that had me, like, even on a second watch going, but that's just me. Mostly involving Galactus, but
pass it. Who do you want next?
Let's go to Katie, because I know Jeff's. I know Jeff's. I've seen his review, so we'll go to Katie because I haven't heard her thoughts on this one.
I think Earth 828 is the first Marvel universe that I want to live in, breathe in, and spend the rest of my life in. I said this as soon as I left the theater. The aesthetic of this film is one of the most beautiful of most of the Marvel films. I'm putting it up there with like Black Panther with what they've done, everything, architecture, even the dialogue and stuff. And that's one of the things I love. I know there are some people who think there's not enough jokes and stuff like that, but the fact that when it's, from me, what I feel like it's set like in that Camelot era of the early 60s mixed with the Jetsons, like when Pedro Pascal is speaking, it just, hi Ian. It just always reminded me of seeing those old news clips of, the astronauts and, the guys, it's like very stiff and proper and everything like that. And that's one of the things that I feel like this does. These are characters who are a little bit older. They're taking it seriously. Reed, as I said, I feel like the 2005, 2007, they're kind of confused doing their thing. 2015 is very, very angry. With this one, they've had their things going on for 3 years. The world knows who they are. The world relies on who they are. The world is very open about talking to them, praising them, even doing ads and stuff like that. So who knows how much revenue they're making by being the Fantastic Four, because that's honestly, I don't see that in any of the other Marvel movies. When Johnny has like a copper tone billboard and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, so you guys are making the bank. Good for you. Nice. I mean, obviously you're in a very nice apartment, but I don't know how you're making that money. But
well, they did, sorry to jump in, they did a whole endorsement storyline in, I think, Rise of the Silver Surfer, where he showed that he had the one prototype suit that they almost looked like a racing suit with all the different patches and things on it. So he was constantly trying to get deals. I don't know if they actually got there, but that was definitely one of the storylines. But yeah, that's something I hadn't even really considered, Kate. I like where you're going with that.
Yeah, and I like that in the beginning you have the exposition for everyone. This is one of the first films. Again, I'm going to say Black Panther because they have so much that we're able to learn in that film. But with this, you don't need to have I watched 12 movies and 4 TV shows and did all this to really understand this universe. It's like you can go in and not know all the people. I mean, yeah, it may help later on but I feel like this isn't one of those ones that you have to have the full history of Marvel to walk into this film and enjoy it. And I love that. I thought the casting was fantastic, and I am going to stand up for Pedro Pascal. I feel like this Reed Richards is very, as I said, he's very cautious because he made a mistake, and that's what caused all of this. And he will never forgive himself, even if everyone of the family has forgiven him.
That's fair.
And even when Sue gets pregnant, he's constantly worried about it, always doing the ultrasound and all that stuff. And then when she does a little thing, it's like, you want to see the baby? Here he is, like, oh, look at your trick, girl. Look at that. All right. And I also love that Paul Walter Hauser, which I don't feel like he gets enough credit. This is like the third or fourth film he is in this year, even if it's not big roles. Love it. That kid,
he slays.
Yeah, he freaking kills it. And again, I like how with Sue Storm, we've talked about, but as the world relies on them possibly too much, because again, with the Marvel films, you don't really see too much of the world reacting to the superheroes. You do in Age of Ultron, you do in Civil War, how they turn on them. But until then, you don't really see people like, yay, Avengers, here's my little picket sign and all that stuff. This is a world that's very open to the Fantastic Four. They want them to succeed. And also they know if they fail, it's like, what the hell are you doing? And I like how Sue steps it up. It's just like, I'm not sacrificing my child for this world, but I'm also not sacrificing this world for my child. And it's like, we're going to work together. I'm just giving myself chills doing that quote. Cause I'm like, Vanessa Kirby kills it. I think everyone is great. I know some people are saying like Ebon Moss-Baccarat. I just think this is a way to get him into the film, and I think there's going to be more into the series. I feel like there's definitely going to be more of his character in the next ones. I like that Johnny knows he's maybe not the smartest, but he does his due diligence to figure that out. And I also like the fact that, when he's with Shalaba and she does the quote, it's like, die with yours. It's like, this is a deep film. It may not be funny. It may not be quirky. It may not have a lot of those, jokes that we're overused to with, again, the Marvel films. But as I stated, I feel like it's because it sets in that, in our timeline, that early 60s, that they don't have that. And I don't feel like they need it. I love this film. I want people to see it. I want people to enjoy it. I honestly look forward to seeing it again. I like that it's not 3 hours long, overdoing it and all the stuff. And I also like that no matter what happens, they work together, and despite the F-ups that each one of them possibly make, they're going to be there for each other, which is a true family. And Julia Garner, I could see a lot of people being her for Halloween. All for it. Go for it. And I'm looking forward to seeing Avengers Doomsday now because of all this.
Sorry, because I got blipped for like 5 minutes. I don't.
You just didn't want to hear my bit. That's fine. No, you didn't want to hear my bit. I understand that. I understand, because I'm going to be in the minority and didn't think this was just fantastic. I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was fantastic. But I'll just stay in the corner. You guys go right ahead.
I thought it was amazingly awesome. So.
That's awesome. I'm glad you are.
Practically perfect in every way.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it for a second time yesterday. Took my family. I'm glad I got a refresher because I'd seen it like 9 days ago or whatever it was, and it was great to kind of see it again and pick up on a lot of things that I'd missed. Johnny Storm, I think there was one line in the movie that I really wish they had taken out, because I think it may have colored people's perception of what the character does in this movie. It's when he has the breakthrough where I haven't turned on the spoiler banners all night. Screw it. We're just going to talk spoilers.
Forget it.
Yeah. So it's when he gets the records, the deep space transmissions, and he's created, as he calls it, the Rosetta Stone to translate Shalabal's language or these other transmissions they've been getting from deep space, but no one can decode them. She says, die with yours, and that gives him the in to translate the rest of it. Ben Grimm at one point says he can barely speak English. How is he translating all these messages? If they had taken that line out, Johnny is not an idiot in this movie.
Right.
In fact, it's something I hadn't picked up on is it's not, because I've heard this criticism. Oh, the Silver Surfer says one line, all of a sudden he's able to translate this language. No, one of his hobbies is studying these deep space transmissions on these records, because when Reed gets the one that points to the Silver Surfer specifically, he comes in and Reed's like, "Hey Johnny, I got another record for you," and he takes it back to his room and he puts it with his collection and listens to it. So this is something that's been kind of a fascination with Johnny Storm. Yes, he's, he loves the ladies and all this other stuff, and he is sort of the comic relief along with Ben. Although, to an earlier point, that is kind of given, takes a back seat. And I think rightfully so. They are pretty funny. Like, hey Johnny, your girlfriend's back. It's cute. Reed Richards, I think I love Pedro Pascal in this movie. I was dreading seeing him because in the trailers, we get stuff that's in the movie, but outside the context, it really doesn't work. Like when one of the reporters says, "Are we going to be safe?" and he just looks into the microphone and goes, I don't know. He just seems so like impotent and helpless. And it's like, this is not the leader of the Fantastic Four. But in the moment of the movie, he's just come back from space where this god has said, "I'm going to wipe out all of your people unless you give me your son." And he's like, "I don't know how to answer that question."
Right.
You're right. And so, but the other thing that I'd heard someone mention, and I really looked for this on my second viewing, without coming out and explicitly saying it or making it a message movie or a public service announcement, I fully believe Reed Richards in this movie is autistic. And one of the key bits there is that someone says, they ask him, what are the context clues for something that he is discussing? Also, he is very much, even more so and to a different degree than the other versions of Reed that we've seen on screen, very much into things and not so good with people. He doesn't quite understand what's the big deal. I'm building this ultrasonic monitor to test whether our baby is going to be, super powered, but all his wife wanted for him was to build a crib. And he's like, this is more important, but it's not. And he doesn't quite understand that because he has trouble reading people. And it takes really the birth of his son to get him to shed some tears and show some emotion. So, yes, I get that he's not the quippy, zippy Reed Richards that we've seen in other iterations. This is a different take on the character. Perhaps there is a version of that in a future storyline, but because they set us firmly in this version, which is why I didn't have as much a problem with Miles Teller. Katie, I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think Miles Teller's character in 2015's Fantastic Four was dark. He was a teenager in a dark world. He's very much kind of full of awe, and he's very studious and everything, but it's not like, I'm going to go, build this machine to blow up the world because I hate my parents. None of that is in there. But it is a different version of Reed.
The movie at whole was like dark.
When you were discussing Reed Richards a little bit ago, you made reference to that. Yes. Yeah, sorry. I'm looking at the comments on the side. Petty, I'm sorry we've ruined it for you by not putting up the spoiler banner.
Ruined it.
Yeah. But so that's my overall highlights. I think, Katie, because I don't want this show to be 9 hours long, but you've tackled a lot, I think, of the things I responded to in this film. I love this movie. I think it does sort of the greatest hits of the Fantastic Four, but in a way that packages them into something that can definitely move forward. With the other iterations, for whatever reason, they never quite got off the ground. And unfortunately, because this movie is stumbling at the box office, I'm wondering what shape Doomsday is going to be in. I frankly am not excited for Doomsday because of this movie. It shows that you can do a self-contained, inspiring, action-oriented superhero movie with humor and do it well, because Marvel used to know how to do that stuff before they got tangled up in their own convolutions. I want to see a sequel to this movie, but I don't think we're getting one, unfortunately. And I don't know what the FF are going to look like in Doomsday, because they're going to be part of that whole cast. And we saw them show up at the end of Thunderbolts and that teaser. Who knows what's going on there? But I'm not excited about it. I'm excited to watch this movie again. I'm not excited to see anything that Feige and co have to come up with. But I hated the trailers for this movie and had no expectations going in that it would be good. So maybe I am about to be surprised next year. Jeff.
Yes, sir.
Go for it, sir.
I agree with almost everything that everybody said. Yeah, I think you could probably have a little more Ben and maybe to some degree Johnny here. But man, I'm so glad we had so much Sue Storm. She's fantastic in this. I think the stakes are very, very strong here. I mean, when they go out into space and there's all kinds of things from going through the wormhole and hoping that the ship stays together when it's rattling about and they have to all work at different functions, and Herbie as well. And then, you reveal Galactus and he's ginormous, and the Silver Surfer is still, kind of on the bad side. I mean, that, and then of course Sue starts to go into labor, which is like, it's both terrifying, but so witty in its like construct that I'm telling you, for me, I literally gasped. I don't know if you noticed this, Ian, when I was sitting next to you at the critic screening, but when you see, and the camera is like in the sort of, and then you see Silver Surfer coming through the ship, about to touch the baby, and her hand reaches into her stomach.
Get in there. Yep.
And then suddenly Ben Grimm puts the force on and, they rocket out of there. I thought, God damn it, I can't remember the last time that I felt like this at a superhero movie, or at least a Marvel movie, which has, so many kind of manufactured things. And I mean, I did almost have to go back to when everybody starts dying at the end of, Infinity War. It's like, what's going on here? Oh my God, they just killed off these people. And I just thought it was so impressive, and they did underline everything. I think it was humorous and witty without feeling the need to be corny and jokey and wisecracky. I'll tell you one thing that it reminded me when I saw it for the second time, and I admired it just as much. And I know this is a little bit of a weird comparison, but I'll just be quick here. It reminded me a little bit about what Nicholas Meyer did when he picked up the Star Trek franchise after the sort of disastrous 1979 version, which was bloated and too serious, and everything was about the nostalgia. And we spent 20 minutes just getting Spock onto the first entrance to the ship and all that kind of hooey. They streamlined all that. Everything here that moves, they give the exposition in a few minutes, and I got it. I got who these people are. They're Ben Grimm goes out dressed in the hat and the raincoat like he always does, but he's not just like, oh, I'm walking around morose and doing all that. He's a normal person with a normal voice, making contact with people where he can. And that scene with those kids, and they all think, oh, you're so cool. It's like, there you go. It's a nice little moment. He wishes he could be accepted, and he is, for himself as he is, without having to feel nostalgic for his old self. It reminded me of Star Trek 2, where they just moved it along, and they didn't have these, sort of precious things about everything. And they looked at the characters and said, what are the themes here? Okay, they're a family. So let's show that family here, and let's have it with, of course, the introduction of the baby, which figures so strongly into the mythology of Fantastic Four and becomes a bargaining chip as far as Galactus and Silver Surfer are regarding in the plot. And I think it just doesn't feel the need to be part of this whole MCU world too. It stands alone by and large, and arguably, Kevin Feige, that's the future of this. It's not putting them all together in Doomsday. Now, maybe that'll be a great film. The buzz on that is some of it's good, some of it's not so good, but, we'll wait and see. But you could do all these because there's so many great stories that they could do that are one-offs, and do that for all these different things and let them be their own franchises again. But when you see, Doctor Strange show up in 5 films and he's only made 2 himself, it seems silly to me that why is he in 5 films and he only has starred in 2? Or, everybody is like, well, now what we're doing with the Thunderbolts, are they the Avengers or not? They get tied up in their own underwear. Last thing I'll just say about Giannichino is I think, it is a little bit similar to that score from what you said, Don. But here's one thing that he does do, and you'd have to go back to Williams and, dare I say, Jerry Goldsmith, who we're all big fans of here too, is that theme is working so hard. He gets the modern sort of blip, 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 almost like it's, the 60s, like when they did Time Tunnel and right. Lost in Space, that kind of stuff in there, which is great because it's also a callback to the 60s, but it's also modernity. It's computers, right? But he also has the sort of buildup in the excitement and different things like that. And then, of course, I kept thinking, is he going to sing Fantastic Four? And then, of course, comes in Fantastic Four. It's like the notes are there, bum, 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 bum. And then, of course, He says yes, because I'm telling you, if you think about Superman, look up in the sky, it's Superman. I mean, you can almost see John Williams saying that's what the cadence is going to be for my main theme. And he does that here, which is also a callback to that. And it just is so infectious. And that's what the thing is. I said in my review, just my last thought is, I was so impressed right off the bat. Like, they're moving this along. They're not wasting time on all this exposition like the 2015 version. We're in high school. And it just moved, and it could have been a little longer to Mark's point, but it clips along, and I was on the edge of my seat for some of those scenes. I mean, even the Silver Surfer has sort of an arc, and Julia Garner's her line readings are very good. She's a very accomplished actress. And I was smiling from beginning to end.
You know, it's funny because Julia Garner, much like Paul Walter Hauser, is having quite the moment. I mean, she was in Wolfman earlier. She's in this, and then in 2 weeks she's in Weapons coming out. So she's probably other stuff, right?
That's right. And the buzz on that is supposedly very good.
Weapons is supposed to be fantastic. Yeah.
Oh,
and Sarah Niles. Yeah, no, but
choose a word.
Right, but Sarah Niles in this movie, she shows up as Sue Storm's kind of like attaché or publicity manager. She was also in F1. I think the two top movies of July for me are F1 and F4. Go figure.
Yeah, I was going to say. In fact, I was going to wait and make that joke at the end, Ian. I said your summer could be described as F1 to F4.
Well, I
Fujita scale of tornadoes is what he is. That's right. Here we go.
One thing I wanted to mention about that space chase, with them going up to meet Galactus and then them trying to escape, it reminded me of, I think, one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation, which is from, I think, the second season, the introduction of the Borg, where the Enterprise they're out, they've been out in space for like a year, and they're like, it's all cool. We've seen a lot of civilizations, and we got the Federation behind us. We're a bunch of badasses. And then Q shows up, and he's like, he's the space god, and he wants to join their crew. And Picard and Q have had kind of this like troubled history. Q is kind of like a space imp, like the one that Kal-El might let destroy the city while he puts on his boots. Anyway, so they're kind of talking, and Q is like, "Oh, you don't think you need me? Well, what about this?" And he snaps his fingers, and he hurls the Enterprise across the unknown galaxy, where they encounter the Borg for the first time. And the end of that episode is the Borg are this unstoppable technological force that can match all the frequencies of their laser blasts and invade the ship and all this other stuff. So the Enterprise has to run, and they have then they're being overtaken by the Borg to the point where Picard has to say, "Please, just get us out of this." And Q snaps his fingers, and they're safe again. And then they're like, "Okay, well, yeah, that was great, and we're back." And Q, you're still not part of the crew. But Picard goes to the bar and meets up with Guinan, who's Whoopi Goldberg's character, and she says, "Well, that was great, and you survived, but now they know who you are, and they're going to come looking for you."
That's right.
And
you're on
the
their
rest is
radar.
history. I got that same vibe from this whole Galactus storyline, where they go up to meet Galactus, like, "Who is this Galactus guy? He's like a space dragon or something." And then they have to turn tail and run because they get scared, and they can't quite run because Galactus has this faster than light herald who's going after them and reaching into the pregnant woman. Oh, and by the way, probably accelerating the delivery of their child.
By the way, I mean, you've just hit on something that I think is such a trope that these movies forget, especially when they can fly around and escape everything on a lightning speed and all that, is when you put people in a container, whether it's a spaceship or a submarine or anything like that, is great. I mean, think about Star Trek 2 again, not to bring that analogy back, but it's similar to what you're working is like they're in that cosmic cloud and they can't escape fast because they have to get out there. They sort of slowly get to the point where now we can do the warp drive. That tension is incredible. It's like, and what are you supposed to do? You can move it faster, but you got to wait until you're there. The plane, our patience, as well as the patience of the cast, crew members in that container, it works like gangbusters. And this one, it's such a simple thing, and yet they did it so well here because you can't just escape like that. And you've got a woman with a baby being born, and it's like, how do you even, one rattle of that ship could ruin that. It's extraordinary how simple that was, and yet how powerful.
Yeah. Reminds me of another great delivery in space, J.J. Abrams' Star Trek 09, which whatever became of the rest of that series, I think that is still one of the great opening 10 minutes of any film of the last 25 years.
And who played his dad?
Chris
Thor.
That's
Yeah.
right.
But yeah, I think there's a lot to recommend in Fantastic Four. On the second rewatch, another thing I caught, the opening, a very intimate, personal opening where the revelation that Sue is pregnant. At first, I thought that the pregnancy test, when she puts it on the counter to show Reed, I thought it said Stark something because it's in this kind of fancy script, but no, it was Stork, like Stork magic or something. So yes, again, further separating it out from all the other MCU stuff. It would have been very easy to put that in there.
Almost lullaby notes were worked into the score as well. So, you've not only got the 60s computer, but you've got a little bit of it's very sort of lullaby-ish, almost like a child's kind of toy that he watches in the crib or something.
Yeah.
Very clever score.
Yeah.
Well, and sorry, I want to bringing up the fact when Sue tells everyone, when they announce she's pregnant, I have to say, when they show Ben's face and it's like, you're late, like what? And it's like, you see his face, like, I love the fact that he's a rock, yet the expression that he has and stuff, it's like, you're pregnant. And I'm like, thinking back on that, I'm like, that's so hard to do. I mean, yes, it's CGI and all that, but I love the fact that it's the guy who's the rock that you can tell knows exactly what's going on from the his facial expressions. And that's a great moment.
And it is a great moment. It's something that you could not have done in 1994 with those kind of practical prosthetics, because he would have had to go like, "You're pregnant," the eyes going all rich
and
away.
And then the styrofoam rubber would have broken or cracked.
Yeah,
probably.
Or kooky eyes. Yeah.
Exactly. I think, there's a lot of, I love the subtlety. I love the fact that this movie takes a lot of time to breathe. I've heard the complaint that that's boring and too much character stuff, and I don't understand that criticism.
There's not enough.
Well, but that's the other thing. Like I've heard the criticism here on the panel and elsewhere that they took stuff out of this movie. I don't quite know what more people want from this first film. What do you feel? And this is an open for the panel. What is missing from these characters?
Yeah. I'll do one piece, and it doesn't have to be long or very prolonged in terms of how they do it. But like one of the biggest things that helps the whole defeat of Galactus. I don't need Utah to Watcher and all that. I don't need the Ultimate Nullifier. But I do need a more convincing face turn for Silver Surfer. Johnny does his best with the language thing, and it really hits the heart of what she's looking for and what she's going for. But I think you need one more piece of that somewhere. Like I said, maybe it doesn't have to be Alicia Masters like you did in the comic, but something somewhere, or even just those ending stakes of she pushes Galactus into the void with her, or with him in the magnetic, the teleportation thing. But I remember where she's locked on Earth, or at least Norrin Rad was at the time. So those stakes for Galactus, or I'm sorry, for Silver Surfer, and those continuing earthbound ties, I was hoping for just a scotch more.
I understand that. I think I understand the criticism. I share it in the very narrowest degree, which I think is only a matter of timing, because I think it's a very powerful moment where Johnny plays her the recordings of all of the worlds that she let die in order to save her own. I think if that had been closer to the moment where she makes the sacrifice, because there's that whole stretch where she realizes all this and she's kind of screaming, and then she goes away. But then there's all this time of Galactus is coming, well, where the hell is the Silver Surfer? And then she comes out, she Rose Tico's it at the end. But it's what was she doing this whole time? Did Galactus know about these recordings? What is his reach in terms of, because he can control her body telepathically, can he also read her mind, because he also infused her body with that silver goo? There are some questions there that in the moment, I think the drama really works, but when you're breaking it down, yes, there could have been a bit more exposition there. But also, my question is, if they'd padded it out with more of that, would have been okay, now it's just more talk and more explanation. Yeah.
It's fair.
Yeah,
but no, I definitely take that point. Sorry, go ahead.
I loved her arc, and I loved the exposition that they had, because you have a character who basically is the henchman of Galactus, so you don't feel much empathy or anything but hate, because obviously she's coming in there saying, guess what, you guys are going to die. Nothing you can do. Sorry, not sorry. here's a little quote I did. But then when you see why she had to do what she did to save her world while also destroying others, it did give me a little bit of empathy for her, even though I shouldn't really feel it. But that's hard to do, and they did that in a very, very quick way. So again, I like the fact that they have the exposition in this, like, speed it up. Don't have to drag it on for 40 minutes. That's my take on it.
What would have been interesting, perhaps, and I don't know how they would have worked this in because it would have changed the dynamic of the story, but it's the problem that I had that they didn't really bring up, but with the whole bargain for Franklin Richards, the baby, is Galactus said he will spare Earth if they give him the baby. Why should they believe him? Why not take the kid and also eat the planet? Now, it's also unclear as to what the motivation is for Galactus here, because in one passage he says this baby is going to satisfy, he's the only thing in creation that can satisfy this eternal hunger, because at one point I was like you, a puny human, and over billions of years I grew into this thing that has to eat. On the other hand, there's another passage, and this might speak to something that was deleted, where he said, he is destined to become my successor. Now, maybe they're tied together, like he gets to stop eating because he'll finally be able to die and rest, and he'll pass on this curse like the tape in the ring to some other poor sucker who's got to be the devourer of worlds. That's not quite explained. But it would have been interesting if Shala Bal, maybe at the end, Johnny puts her through that guilt trip, but also reveals that, hey, there's this other transmission from your planet as it's being eaten by Galactus. He went back and he killed all your people anyway, now that he had you enslaved. And that could have been the thing that sent her over the edge to shove him back into that portal. But as it is, it's, we got the movie we got. And it is kind of basic, but it's also, I think, a good first step. And
again, I have my criticism, which is why I didn't think it quite elevated like you guys, but I will say that it is a very entertaining film, definitely worth a watch on the big screen. I have my issues with it, which I know everybody here will say I'm wrong on, so I'll just stay quiet on those.
Mark, you've told us them already.
I haven't.
We were listening and we're respectful.
Well, give us a couple, because you can't just keep
I have a problem.
We're going to get out of here in a few minutes, but I want to hear some.
It's still the same problem that I have with not just Marvel, but a lot of superhero films, but more so on Marvel, but it's because of the focus on the heroes, because obviously they're the title character. But in here, there are some choices that they make with the villain that, especially not knowing anything, had me questioning why. Like, Galactus seems to change his size throughout this movie, from being uber huge in the ship to now being just taller than skyscrapers to now not quite being tall as skyscraper. The scope of him, even through that walk through New York, was had me quite, what is going on? It seemed like the scale varied for me, and that bugged me a little bit. Also, the fact that he was smart enough to detect, because spoilers, the decoy, but he wasn't smart enough to destroy the only machine left on Earth that could have possibly led to him being teleported off the Earth. Even he had Shala Bal destroy all the other ones on Earth. Johnny Storm stopped her from the last one. He gets there right at the line, puts his foot up, and doesn't cross it. His hand is literally right here to where. So before he turns and looks for he could have easily just went bloop. Okay, now I'm going to look for the baby. So that was the question I had. Also with Shala Bal, I get where they were going, but time is handled weird in this film. And it was for me, as far as time frame of how long it was taking Galactus versus how long it was taking them to build stuff around the world. They hint at it, but not really. But then Shala Bal comes out of nowhere, destroys all of the points where she could have easily known where the baby was. She knew how to phase through matter, could have gone in, grabbed baby, and left, and you wouldn't have had all that. So there's
not. I don't know if she knew where the baby was, because that scanning device came from Galactus's ship.
Right, I know, but she knew that they were based in New York, and they literally have a tower that has a big 4 on it. in the middle.
I wonder what their house is. Yeah.
So she could have easily phased through there. And then the other thing, which is just a broader scope, and it's I chuckle because I'm running it into the comics, and you see it here, both here, and yes, I will say Superman to an extent. It is amazing how many big eggshells every single comic book property, either written or on movie, is trying to get around the collateral damage fallout from Man of Steel, because you get it here. And I know nothing about Subterranea, so they can fill millions of people from New York down under Subterranea. Didn't know that. Okay, so
but they established that in the film.
Not how big Subterranea
is. They do.
They call
it the nation of Subterranea.
Yeah,
right?
but you could call a nation that's a oil rig has called itself a nation. There's smaller countries.
Well, no,
smaller
but within
but Mark, with time too, like you can pull all that off in a weekend. You know, like
no, but here's the thing: there is significant time given to that evacuation effort. They'd done a dry run of it with the global effort to gather all the resources, to do the turning off the lights, so everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
And on top of it, it's never stated that the entire city goes to Subterranea.
There's people in buildings that are dying.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they could have evacuated to surrounding areas, and also people underneath the city could go there too. They had weeks to prepare for the coming of Galactus, right?
Sorry, didn't they say like 3 months that when they were taking Shalaba into the black hole, she would be stuck there for?
No,
she'd be stuck there for a month.
So she got
had a month.
They said
back.
1 month, and then so she got back to Galactus around the same time that the Fantastic Four got back to Earth, because it was a 1 month trip. So and I understand the whole thing about taking out the other portals. I understand your point, Mark, and I would have to think about this a bit more, but in a sense, it does make sense to knock out all of those other portals around the globe, because if you start in New York, what are you going to do? Like go
I'm not saying
the
that
world
they had
and then come back to the
wasn't-
point where you want to kidnap the baby? I don't know.
I wasn't saying they had to start at New York. What I'm saying is with Shala Bal's powers, she didn't need to necessarily go through and destroy them. She knew the tower with the big 4 on it is where they were at. She could have phased through and gotten the baby and skipped that part.
Well,
and
but here's the thing. They were 5 seconds away from teleporting the planet when she shows up to do that whole maneuver, right? So she had to take out the rest of the ability to move that planet, right?
It's also where Mark's on something too, where if they need them all for them to work, you can flick off one and you're kind of done, just.
Well, she didn't know that.
You didn't need to take them all out, but it was a cool move,
Yeah, she didn't know that, and frankly, neither did Reed and everything. All of this stuff was theoretical, and I think that was one of the things that was so enjoyable about this scene leading up to this. Is I thought they were going to teleport the Earth because of all the talk of like Doomsday and all this other stuff and alternate realities. They talk about alternate dimensions in the film. I was like, is this going to be the soft lead into Doomsday? And are they going to leave Galactus as, again, the Borg out there that then has to find his way into it? And will he come back in Doomsday? But
interesting.
He's interrupted. And then it becomes a completely different kind of plot for the movie to solve. And I thought that was really interesting.
Anyway, it's just
thanks for bring up these points, Mark. It's not that we're trying to say you're wrong or anything. These are great. These are great points to discuss, because they're things that I hadn't really thought about. Even the second time, I'm so wrapped up in the drama of the film that, unlike, I'm going to bring it up, Superman, where I mentioned from moment one, I'm thinking about like all of the decisions that are made script wise. None of them make any sense if you think about it for more than 2 seconds. For this movie, there are probably like 5 plot holes there that you've given me reason to go back and think about. Katie, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I step on you.
No. A point that I brought up when I talked to Don last night is like, what do Jack Kirby and Stan Lee have against the color dark purple? Because honestly, if I see a color dark purple, I know that is going to be the antagonist in the film. And I had mentioned Thanos and obviously Galactus, but then I was thinking about it. It's like, okay, there's Magneto. Like I think Dr. Doom has a little bit of purple too. It's like, what is with
Kang the Conqueror?
Eggplant?
It's
freaking
color theories on this.
Purple Man. Jessica doesn't Jessica Jones? Does she literally have a bad guy who's purple?
Yeah. Exactly.
Joker. There's color theory with this. Like yellow is the color of memory. That's why legal pads are yellow. And like we all know where red goes with our brains and blue goes with our brains. For purple, it's like royalty, luxury, creativity, evokes feelings of spirituality and mystery. At least that's what AI overview is telling me. But so like if you want to, but if you want to bend that and make that your villain and just kind of, hey, we're gonna assign this color and here we go. And same thing with the Hulk being green and versus gray. And like it's just some of it's ink and availability, but yeah.
Don, can I applaud you and register for that teaser for your comics color theory class? That's great.
Yeah. Oh, I used it before.
Purple is also
like it's cool. Yeah.
It was a hard color to print in the early days of comics, so it was rare. So they probably used it sparingly, and they thought for the villains that would be appropriate. Because technically speaking, really up until this century, purple has mostly been the color of peace. It's used in church and Christianity throughout. But here they turned it into sort of a negative color. Yeah. But I think it's just that it was probably so rare to use that it seemed to make the villain a little more special back in the 30s and 40s when they were printing this stuff.
Okay. And also, I mean, I had forgotten about Magneto and stuff like that. I'm like, wow, there really are a number of villains that as soon as okay, good to know.
Did you all love the Kirby and Lee cameo in this movie?
Yes, that was fun.
Nice touch. Yeah, nice touch.
But yeah, I just want to remind everyone who are fans of comics and movies that blue is the warmest color. Anyway, folks,
French indie cinemas for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I do my podcast with no pants on. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Not this one. Surely. I'm not going to put you to the test on.
No.
Back to the force stick.
Yikes. Yeah. All right. Well, we are just over 2 hours on this podcast. We are longer than Fantastic Four First Steps. But you know what? I'm going to let everyone go.
5 movies. That's really good.
That's really good.
Yes. Thank you for giving me that out, Katie, because I'm like, this is unforgivable. But we have talked about 5 films and the themes involved in them. And I think we've redeemed some of them, or at least given folks something to think about, maybe a little something to chew on. So I do want to thank my dedicated and very supremely intelligent and giving panel here tonight. I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat, Jeff York of The Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artist, Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck, now the CBM shill. You're leaving the branding behind, sir.
I am.
Special Mark Productions and the Spoiler Room Podcast, Don Shanahan of Film Obsessive and the Cinephile Hissy Fit Podcast, and of course, Every Movie Has a Lesson, and Katie Glidewell, the blonde in front, who wants 4 more, please. I agree, but not Doomsday. I want 4 more Fantastic Fours.
Yes, I want 4 more Fantastic Fours.
Actually, I want more standalone movies.
The
one thing that I did enjoy about marathoning the other ones was when you get to Fantastic Four, they were their own solo movie, and I've been watching a few other older superhero films and even some older MCU. Why they work? They're solo films.
Yeah,
you're giving these characters to breathe, and I think they fell apart in phase 4 and 5.
Oh yeah, no one's going to differentiate the movies or the TV shows in those phases, and phase 6 will be a miracle if we get out of that. Hold on a second. Sorry, there are a few comments I'm going to zip through. Petty. Hi, friends. I just came online for a moment to say hello. My family are on winter vacation. According to what I heard, the movie doesn't suck. True. And above all, it's not unbearably woke. Yes, also true, although you wouldn't know that from the conversations surrounding this movie. So make up your own mind. Go see it. It's awesome. Looks like some of the older FF movie producers got to Ian. I think this is when I blipped out. No, just my internet. Petty says, no, the spoiler warning is missing, and now the movie is ruined. Good discussion. And also Petty says at some point Ian should make a video about his tier list about his film library. There is no film library or tier list. It's all just Freddy Got Fingered. Anyway, thank you everybody for hanging out and watching this. If you made it this far, congratulations. Your medal is in the mail. Join us back next week where we're going to be talking about one of the most surprising films, dare I say, of the century. The Naked Gun. As Liam Neeson would say, the new version. Yeah, 8 p.m. Central next Wednesday. We're going to be here to talk about it in all spoilerific detail. It's going to be, yes, another Here We Go Again, because it's a requel, not a remake, not a sequel, but it's kind of both. So watch homework. I'm only going to ask that you watch the first Naked Gun. Don't have to worry about the sequel unless you want to. I know you watched all 3, Don, and I appreciate that. And then the new version with Liam Neeson, which spoiler as to my thoughts, go see it in a theater, please.
Oh yeah, communal experience for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Laugh together.
And if you've seen the trailers and you're like, is this guy serious? Yes, I'm serious. And I also shared those same concerns about the trailer. So yes, that's it for Fantastic Four, the entire franchise. I will say we didn't really compare it to Superman that much. I did get a few unfair digs in perhaps, but I will say if you want to read my full thoughts on the differences and the similarities between the films, I will link down below tomorrow, because I didn't do it tonight, an article I wrote, or an opinion piece, whatever, on the 5 key plot points that are shared between Superman 2025 and Fantastic Four First Steps, and why I think one movie clearly comes out on top in all regards. It is not fair nor balanced, but then again, neither am I. Whoa. Hold on a second. I don't know if I can read this, Petty, but the answer is in real life, possibly. Anyway, everybody out there, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks again to my wonderful crew. I'm going to let you all get to sleep. If you like this live stream, please like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications and all that business. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much. Take care. And Excelsior. Damn it. Excelsior.
Excelsior.